They say justice is blind, but in some courtrooms, it's also terrified. Terrified of the powerful, of money, of politics. But there are rare moments when one person dares to stand against it all. This is the story of such a person, a lawyer, a man who had everything to lose, but chose to risk it all. Before we dive in, if stories of real courage, truth, and justice speak to you, consider subscribing to our channel. Every day, we bring you powerful narratives that go beyond the headlines. Now let's begin. Elias Rahman wasn't just any attorney. He had a pristine record, a luxury office, high-profile clients, and the kind of respect most lawyers spend a lifetime chasing. But behind his calm eyes lived a storm stirred by one particular case. A single mother named Zoya had come to him, trembling. Her husband, a man with deep political connections, had been abusing her for years. She had evidence, medical reports, recordings, photos, but no lawyer in the city would take her case. Why? Because her husband's influence stretched into the very heart of the courts. Elias should have walked away. He had wealthy clients. He had comfort. He had his reputation. But something in Zoya's eyes, something broken, something pleading, reached into the core of who he used to be. When Elias took her case, whispers began. Old clients pulled out. Invitations to elite legal events stopped. He was warned by colleagues. Drop it before it ruins you. But Elias had made up his mind. For the first time in years, he felt like he was doing something that mattered, not just profitable, but right. As the court proceedings began, the pressure grew unbearable. Files went missing. Witnesses were threatened. Anonymous letters appeared on his doorstep. Zoya's husband, smug in his power, smirked at Elias from across the courtroom. This wasn't just a trial. It was a war. And in this war, Elias was alone. But then came the moment that would change everything. Zoya's child, just 9 years old, took the stand. Her tiny voice told the court everything. The fear, the screams, the nights she held her mother's hand, wondering if they'd survive till morning. The room fell silent. Even the judge couldn't meet her eyes. That day, something shifted. A crack appeared in the fortress of influence. But it wasn't enough. Behind the scenes, Elias discovered documents that could destroy Zoya's husband's career, but exposing them would violate every unwritten rule of power. He had a choice: protect himself and let justice be buried, or drag the truth into the light and lose everything. What would he choose? Elias sat in his office long after the courthouse lights had dimmed. In front of him lay a folder: confidential government contracts, shell company records, bribe trails, everything that could bring Zoya's husband to his knees. But exposing it meant going after men far more powerful than just one abuser. It meant going after a system. He didn't sleep that night. The next morning, his car tires were slashed. A shadowy figure followed him home. Calls came with no voices, just breathing. The message was clear: stay quiet. But Elias wasn't that kind of man anymore. In court, the next day, he stood taller. Not with arrogance, but resolve. He submitted the documents. The courtroom buzzed like a shaken hive. The judge called for an emergency recess. Zoya clutched Elias's arm, whispering, "Are we safe?" "I don't know," he said honestly, "but we're finally being heard." Within hours, media outlets caught wind of the case. It exploded online. Headlines read, "High-profile lawyer takes on corrupt power broker." Interviews were requested, but Elias declined them all. "Let the courtroom speak," he said, and the courtroom roared. Zoya's husband, once untouchable, was now unraveling. The financial corruption, the offshore accounts, The violence, it painted a picture so ugly even his own allies began to distance themselves, but that didn't stop the backlash. Elias's firm was raided under false pretenses. His law license was suddenly under review. A baseless ethics complaint appeared, accusing him of misconduct for releasing the documents. Still, he didn't back down. "I became a lawyer to serve the law," he told the disciplinary board, "not to bow to those who manipulate it." Behind closed doors, his family begged him to quit. His wife worried for their safety. His children were being followed home from school. But Elias knew something deeper. If he walked away now, he would never forgive himself. And Zoya, she would be silenced forever. The trial pushed forward. Witness after witness testified. The judge, once hesitant, now watched Elias with a kind of silent respect. The tide was turning, but the final blow was yet to come. In a twist no one saw coming, Elias subpoenaed a former bodyguard of Zoya's husband, a man who had fled the country years earlier. With support from an international human rights group, Elias got him to testify remotely. What he revealed stunned the court. The abuse wasn't just personal, it was systemic. Zoya's husband had used his position to intimidate, blackmail, and hurt others. This wasn't just about one man and one woman anymore. This was about an entire network of silence. And Elias was breaking it. But justice always demands a price. And Elias was about to pay his in full. The bodyguard's testimony sent shockwaves through the legal community. News anchors dissected every word. Social media exploded with hashtags demanding accountability, and public outrage surged like a tidal wave. But behind the scenes, Elias felt the weight of an invisible target tightening around him. 2 nights after that testimony, Elias's office was broken into. Nothing was stolen, just ransacked. His documents tossed, drawers ripped open, files scattered. It was a warning, not a robbery. They were watching, and they were furious. But Elias didn't stop. The next morning, he stood in front of the courthouse with the same calm, steady voice he always used. He wasn't just fighting for Zoya anymore. He was standing for everyone who'd ever been crushed by power and silenced by fear. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was electric. Zoya took the stand. Her voice trembled at first, but Elias stood behind her like a shield. She told her story of the bruises hidden beneath designer sleeves, of the isolation masked by luxury, of the nights she feared she wouldn't wake up. Some jurors wept, others clenched their jaws, but the silence in the room wasn't of indifference. It was of deep, collective pain. Elias watched them closely. They weren't just hearing her, they were feeling her, and that's when he knew they had a chance. But just as momentum was building, Elias received a letter. It was unsigned, typed, and cold. "Drop the case, or your children won't make it to school." He stared at it for hours, not with fear, but with rage. The kind of rage that doesn't scream, it sharpens. He turned the letter over to the authorities, but deep down, he knew justice would have to keep moving, even without protection. He made arrangements for his family to leave town. Quietly, safely. When his wife asked if it was worth it, he held her hand and said, "If we back down, we teach our children to run from truth. I won't let that be their legacy." The next court session was the final stretch. Elias called his last witness, a whistleblower from within the corrupt circle. She had evidence, audio recordings, financial logs, encrypted emails. Everything aligned with Zoya's and the bodyguard's testimonies. The defense crumbled. Zoya's husband, once arrogant and untouchable, now sat pale and sweating. And then came Elias's closing statement. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't even loud. It was a simple message. Justice is not a favor given by the powerful, it's a right earned by the courageous. And with that, the room fell silent. The jury would deliberate the next day. But Elias knew, no matter the verdict, something had already shifted. The truth was finally louder than fear, but the cost of truth was about to come due. The next morning, the courtroom was packed. Journalists lined the back wall, cameras rolled quietly outside, and the world waited. Elias sat with Zoya, calm on the surface, but his hands tightly clasped. This wasn't just a case anymore, it had become a mirror held up to the face of a broken system. The jury entered. 12 ordinary people, now holding the weight of a nation's attention. The foreman stood, paper in hand. We, the jury, find the defendant, guilty on all counts. Gasps echoed. Zoya collapsed into quiet sobs, her hands covering her face. Elias exhaled, but didn't smile. He knew justice came with a price, and that price wasn't over yet. As the verdict hit the headlines, Elias was both celebrated and hunted. His name trended worldwide. He received awards, standing ovations, and invitations to speak. But he also received more threats, anonymous emails, shadows outside his home, strange cars that appeared and vanished. He kept his family away, still in hiding. He kept working. Other survivors came forward. Inspired by Zoya's bravery and Elias's unwavering stand, women from all walks of life, some high-profile, some entirely unknown, began telling their stories. What once seemed impossible now felt inevitable. Change. But change is never welcomed by those who benefit from the status quo. Late one evening, as Elias locked up his modest office, a man approached him. Dressed like any other lawyer, briefcase in hand, soft-spoken. "You've made powerful enemies," the man said, without introduction. "You've opened a door that people wanted sealed shut." Elias didn't respond. The man continued. "They're not just going to let you keep walking." Elias looked him in the eye and replied, "Then I'll keep walking faster." The man smirked, handed him an envelope, and disappeared into the night. Inside were names, victims, whistleblowers, and proof that Zoya's husband was only one of many. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. Elias had become more than a lawyer. He was now a symbol, a beacon of courage in a world dimmed by fear and silence. He knew the road ahead would be dangerous, but he also knew one thing. If he turned back now, everything he stood for would vanish, and the next Zoya might never get her voice back. So he stood taller, fought harder, and chose truth again and again, no matter the threat, no matter the cost, because justice is only real when someone's brave enough to fight for it. Thank you for watching this story. If it moved you, if it opened your eyes, or stirred something inside, consider subscribing to our channel for more stories like this. Stories that challenge, inspire, and stay with you long after they end. And remember, one voice can start a ripple, but many voices together, they create a wave. Be part of that wave.